Good morning, everybody. My name is Greg Tolentino. I want to thank all of you for coming here for our second PSCal user group and demonstration session. It's 11 o'clock now. Want to get started. It looks like some people are still joining up, so we'll give them just another minute or so before we actually get started on the content. But I suppose we can go ahead and we'll just go through a little bit of the agenda, what we're going to talk about today, and sort of give you an introduction there. So for those of you for whom I have not had the chance to meet yet, my name is Greg Tolentino. I am the product manager at TEGAM for TEGAM's RF product line. I'm also the applications engineer for RF products as well. Also with me, though, I'm actually working remotely today. So also with me is Rich Steiner. Rich is the applications engineer at TEGAM. He handles all of the thermometry, bond meter, and resistance products application support, and also helps me out on the RF side as well. So he'll be running the controls today and at the equipment, and I'll be doing the talking. So a little bit about what we're going to talk, what we'll be going through today. So what I wanted to do with this particular webinar was sort of give an introduction to the new feature, the primary new feature that we brought in PSCal version 4.6. We released it in December of 2020, just a little bit before the holidays. So I think maybe, the release may have gotten shuffled a little bit with, folks being out of the office and vacation time and things like that. So this is a good opportunity to sort of circle back around, show you a little bit of what we've been working on and what you'll find in this new version. And so that you can see sort of the direction that TEGAM is going to be moving with PSCal as we go forward. There were also some bug fixes and things like that, the normal things that are put into new versions. But primarily it was one primary new feature, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. And that feature was real-time charting and historical charting. It was a feature that a lot of customers had been asking us for over the past year or so, and there was a lot of demand for it. And so we sort of carved that out as the first major feature addition for PSCal for TEGAM. And so that's what we'll be going through primarily today. We'd like to show you a little bit of how it works, some of the different things that you can do with it, and then there's some different modes and things like that. So we'll walk through those as well. And then at the end, there'll be some time for some questions and answers. I think this particular webinar is actually going to be fairly quick. So, it's interesting. It's a major feature addition. It's a whole new functionality that was not available in PSCal previously. But it's fairly easy to use. And so it won't take us too long to walk through it. And to show it to you, and then you can ask any questions you may have as follow-ons for that once we've finished. So just a little bit of just one thing of housekeeping. We are recording this webinar. I started the recording right about when I started talking, and shortly after the webinar finishes, probably give us a day or two, we'll have that video posted for this webinar, so you can rewatch it if you need to or want to share it with colleagues. Once that happens, we'll send out another email and let folks know what the link is so that they can go and watch it or download it for viewing at their leisure. So with all that said, I suspect most folks who are going to join us have already signed up. We got a really good list today. So I want to thank everybody for joining. I really appreciate taking some time out of your day. And so we'll go ahead and get started. Rich, if you're ready to get launched in PSCal, we will get demonstrating the feature. So again, I want to mention there's a lot of customer feedback saying that real-time charting was a key functionality that they needed in the software. And so first, I want to thank everybody for that feedback. That's really helpful for us. That lets us know the shortcomings, the things that we can do a little bit better with the software, and the things that are important for all of you in your day-to-day job. So I just want to say, keep that feedback coming, and we really appreciate that. What does the real-time charting do? It gives you a sort of at-a-glance analysis of a calibration that's in progress. And this is a new thing for PSCal. Hold tight there just a second, Rich. I'm kind of running through want to run through this, and then we'll get started with the calibration. So, but real time now, you can see how the calibration is progressing. You can watch the cow factor plot appear on the graph and identify, is there a hole at a certain frequency? Are you seeing something that doesn't quite look right? And you can visually see that information now, and you can see it point by point by point as PSCal progresses through the frequencies. And this is really helpful for technicians sitting on the bench. They don't have to wait for the calibration to finish any longer before they have an idea of how well this sensor is performing. So our goal here is, to give you more information as the calibration is going on, hopefully make your jobs a little bit more efficient and give you a little bit more data so that you can hopefully streamline a little bit of your work process there. There is a limitation right now. This is phase 1 of the live charting. So right now it's cow factor only. And when I say cow factor only, that also includes sensors like Rhodian Schwartz, some of the ladybugs, things like that, where we're actually doing sort of a performance verification first, but live charting works there as well. What we're not doing is reflection at this point or linearity. So those will probably come in like a phase 2 of the charting. So right now it's cow factor only, but again, that was that was the primary feedback that we were getting in the data that folks wanted to be able to see quickly in real time. The live charting feature also has historical comparisons. So you can compare this current real-time calibration to, say, last year's calibration of that same sensor. And using that, you can see how it's comparing against last year's cal. So we'll show you that feature today, but just a quick caveat, it only works with the PSCal file. So this will be something that as you build your library of historical calibration data taken in PSCal, then you'll be able to utilize the historical comparison a bit more. We're going to show you that today on a file that a calibration that I ran yesterday, and then modify the data a little bit so that you'll have, so that we can illustrate the comparison functionality. So we'll go ahead, and the first thing that we're going to do is get started on a calibration. We're going to do a real-time calibration on an abbreviated template that I built. It only has a few frequencies. It's just for demonstration purposes. But you can see it up on the screen right now. Rich has it pulled up here. We got 5 frequencies, 10 meg to 6 gig. This is a E9304 alpha that's on our station back at the office. Connected up to a TEGAM 2505 and an 1830, and my device under test power meter is an E4418. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do this calibration. We're going to do it live, and as the calibration is progressing, we're going to launch the chart and show you how the chart populates as the calibration progresses. So Rich, if you want to go ahead and get started, we'll just like a typical calibration here, we'll go ahead and configure the station. Let that run. It's asking if we have everything connected. We've already tested that several times this morning. Make sure we're ready to go. And PSCal right now is just going through and checking the equipment that is in the station configuration for this particular sensor and making sure everything works. Rich is loading up now the calibration data file for the RF standard. Just making sure that the standard is properly connected to the 1830 and the station's configured and ready to go. So you can see we got the red ready text there letting you know that everything's all set and we can get started with the cal. So now we'll go ahead and click test. Of course, for a lot of you, this is all old hat. But it's always helpful to walk through just to reinforce for folks who may be newer with PSCal. So this is the infamous zero and calibrate the DUT power sensor. For purposes of demonstration, we're just going to click no and move on. So make sure everything's connected to the RF source is connected to the RF standard, and PSCal is starting to prepare to take a measurement. We'll go ahead and let this process start, and then we'll load up charting. Software right now is just zeroing the various instruments that we need to take a good measurement. It looks like it's doing the RF station or the RF bridge, which is the 1830 in this case. And now it's leveling and getting prepared for its first reading. So one of the changes that you'll see, this sort of happened along the way to implementing the charting, is now the data table also populates real time. So we'll watch that first. It's taking its first reading at 10 megahertz. And here in a moment, we'll have cow factor data at 10 megahertz instead of the old way of allowing the entire calibration to run before the data table would populate with the cow factor data. So we'll see that pop up in a moment, and there it is. And Rich, if you could go ahead and launch charting. So this is the chart. You can see right now we only got one data point, and that's the first cow factor. And this chart will update as the calibration runs. So there's some neat features with it. The vertical and horizontal axes will automatically scale with the data points that you have. You can also hover over a data point, and you get a little pop-up there showing you the coordinates of that particular data point. So so that's really helpful if you want to zero in on a particular calibration point and see what the data is, especially as you get more data and the scale sort of increases, the vertical scale, you lose a bit of resolution. So being able to hover over a data point like that can be really helpful. So we're going to allow one more point to run, and then I'd like to show you some of the different display modes that are available in the chart. So this in and of itself is helpful. You can get an idea of the shape of the sensor, cow factor plot as it progresses. But you have some other tools at your disposal as well. You can see the uncertainty. We do display uncertainty bars if you want to see them. So Rich just turned those on the display. And those are derived just from the PSCal calculated uncertainties. So just be aware that, especially in a live sensor, the uncertainty is only going to include those uncertainty contributors that PSCal has access to. So the uncertainties from your RF bridge and RF standard, the DUT power meter, things like that. It might not match up, of course, to your scope of accreditation, depending on what the calculated uncertainty is. So as you're watching it live, keep in mind these are just the calculated uncertainties for PSCal. We haven't done the check uncertainties, the uncertainty lookup table, or anything like that. So it's not modified in any way. You can also compare this to a historical calibration. So Rich, if you could load up the calibration that I ran yesterday. Yep. And so PSCal initially displays whatever the last loaded file was. So right now it's displaying historical data, but we can look at this in a couple different ways. So the first thing that we can do is we can compare these two these two sensors. So we'll go to chart display mode and click compare. And now you can see both traces on the screen. And this works live as well. I talked a little too much there, so we didn't get to load it while it was running live. But this works live as well. The historical data is displayed on screen, and the live data just populates as the calibration progresses. So this is pretty nice here. We can see we got a little bit of a gap starting at about 1 gigahertz. Rich, if you could hover over one of those points there, we can see we're at 103.292 on the historical data and 0.878 on the live data. So we got a little bit of an error there, not too bad, about 0.5% or so. And so we can get just a good gauge of how this sensor is performing compared to the last time it was in the lab. Again, this will only work if the previous cal was done in PSCal. So, but there's some other things we can look at as well. So if we can go back to chart display mode and go to Delta. So this feature, I think, is really important as a technician when really what you're focused on is how is the sensor performing compared to the last calibration. All this is looking at is the current calibration less the historical calibration cal factor. So the advantage of this is you have one trace on screen, so it's a very clear image of the performance of the sensor, but it also increases your resolution. So you can see very clearly what the error was. You can see again at 1 gigahertz, just a little bit less than 0.6 is our error, which is consistent with what we saw when we had both traces on screen. And if you want to get a sense of how the whole sensor is working in both modes, you want to see the compare data, but the delta data is also pretty important to you. You can actually look at both of them together. So, and that's what Rich has just set up now. So this is a little bit more complex of a graph, and I'll just walk you through it very quickly. You can see the green and blue lines are our blue line is our current calibration. The green line is our historical data, and those are in cal factor, and those are related to the left vertical axis. The red line is that delta value that we had just looked at by itself. So now the delta value is on here as well, and that relates to the axis on the right. So we had a question come up. I just want to mention it real quickly. It asked if the software is capable of running on different modes where only a few features are available to certain users. So at this point, if I understand the correction or understand the question correctly, at this point, we don't have that. Some sort of user access control, though, is another one of those features that a lot of folks have asked for. Thinking about the roadmap going forward, I do not expect that we will have the opportunity to roll that into a future version 4.7. I highly suspect it will be in version 5.0. I don't have a release date for it. That's a bit down the development path, but it is high on the list. A lot of folks are asking for that feature, and it's certainly something we'll want to implement. I'll go out on a limb a little bit as well and say that we'll probably try to solicit some feedback from users, talk to some folks who are in management, and sort of have to deal with those user control issues and get their ideas on what a good approach might be. I suspect, though, again, version 5.0 is going to be a very holistic change to PSCal. We have some goals of trying to make it easier to use, let it walk users through the process more clearly. And so it's going to be a major revision, which is why we're going from 4.7, which will probably be the last release in the 4 series, and then we'll jump up to the 5 series. So then getting back to the chart real quick, hopefully that answered that question. I got some others rolling in. I think we're probably going to try to hit those at the end, just to keep the flow going here on the demonstration piece. So we went through the different display modes that are available in live charting. All of those are available to you on any sensor, calibrating cow factor or the performance verification, the RF power piece of the calibration. So there's a second mode available in charting as well. And so this was the real-time example. We're going to go ahead and close this chart, and we'll save this data that we just recorded. So UUT and save, and we can overwrite that, Rich. That'll be fine. Yeah. So we just overwrote some data that we had saved yesterday, but what we wanted to do is be able to show you how to compare two previously calibrated power sensors. So you don't even have to have a live calibration going. If the customer has a question after the fact, if the technician wants to go back and review some data that they had done previously, if management wants to see it, whatever the case may be, you do have that ability built in to version 4.6 of PSCal as well. So we can go to Tools and Charting, and this pulls up that charting window again. It's almost the same, but we have one additional field available to us. So previously we could only load data file 1, which was one historical data file. Now we can load 2 historical data files. So Rich, if you can go ahead and load data file 1, and we'll make that our historical data. And you can see, just like before, we got that trace shows up on the screen, and that's our data file 1 trace. And then we can load data file 2, and that'll be today's calibration. And again, PSCal is displaying the most recently loaded data file. So we can go up to chart display mode now, and we can switch back and forth between sensors if we want. If we just want to look at one or the other, we can do sensor data file 1, sensor data file 2. And on either one of those, again, we can look at uncertainty bars and things like that. All of the same features, though, that are available to us in real time are also available to us in historical comparisons. So we can go to chart display mode and we can compare these two. And that should look familiar to us. That's what we just saw when we did the live data, because these are the same data files. But there's our comparison. We can look at delta as well. And we can go, and we have the files mixed up, so the chart's opposite, but the values are the same. And then chart display mode and compare in delta. Again, we got the same opportunities available to us. So so that's the charting feature in a nutshell. That is, you have some different view modes available to you. We hope that this will make your calibration process a bit easier, a bit more intuitive, give you more data that's right in front of you during the calibration, give you more opportunities to spot irregularities during a sensor calibration, maybe exit calibrations early. If you see something's not going right, save you a bit of time, and ultimately give you a better idea of how the device under test is performing. So there's one other thing I want to go through very quickly on PSCal 4.6, another big change that we made that you may see on your end. So I just kind of wanted to give you a heads up about this. We changed the way that licensing works. So up until version 4.6, one PSCal license would work for any version, and that works, and it was working fine for us. It was no problem. But as we started to develop new features into the software, while at the same time trying to handle bug fixes and things like that, we realized that we needed a better system to be able to manage that. What we really needed to do was we didn't want to have 2 code branches that we were managing at the same time. That can get confusing, and it's also a vector for error. And we wanted to try to prevent that from happening. So we changed the licensing structure a little bit so that we could manage one code branch while still providing a hopefully responsive development for bug fixes and while continuing development on new features. So starting at version 4.6, licenses are now version specific. And really all this means is whenever you purchase a new version of PSCal, or if you're within your free update period within the first year after purchase, if you're within that free update period, whenever you get your update, you'll also get a new license from us. All the same logistics apply to that. So you take your new license, copy it over to your PSCal folder, back up your old one. You have to move it out of the folder, out of the root directory of PSCal, but back it up somewhere, hold on to it, just in case you ever need to revert. But you move that into the PSCal folder, and of course, if you do happen to lose your license, computer takes a nosedive on you, or something gets reformatted or whatever, just drop us a line or give us a call. We keep all of those on file, and we'll be able to get those. We'll be able to get those out to you right away. So that about wraps up the demonstration portion of the webinar. I have some questions here. I'm going to take a moment and sort of review them and see if I can't touch on some of those before we wrap up. So someone asked a question, is all the data saved on a comprehensive report? So the reports have not been changed yet. With this phase 1 of charting, we have not touched the traditional PSCal report. Again, I think this is one of those things that probably will not change in 4.7. And I think we'll be looking forward to the next major release before we really look at how to create a more informative, more robust report. In the interim, keep the feedback coming in, because that really helps inform how we develop these features and how we roll them into the software. Currently, someone asked if we can have more than one history calibration displayed at a time. You cannot do that in live charting. The maximum displayed number of plots is 2. So you can have one historical file and one real-time file, or in the second piece of the demonstration, you can have 2 historical data files. So right now, that's the best that we have it set up. If we continue to hear feedback that you'd like more, we can look into seeing what it would take to get that implemented. Let us know if that's a thing that folks would like to see, and we'll keep that in mind as we move forward. We had control limit lines. Yeah, I'm sorry. We got a question about whether we can configure the control limit lines when we're in Delta display mode. Not right now. Right now, everything is happening in auto mode in the charting. Customization of charts, managing the axes values or the limit lines is not currently a feature. But we'll take note of that and see if there is a sort of smooth way to integrate that into the implementation. I'm not so sure that there will be with the user interface set up the way that it is today, but we'll take a look at that. I think that's a really good question. Thank you for that. There was a question about XML files. Are the XML files in a standard? Could the end user take old data and convert it to the same format to add history to assets? The answer is yes. If I understand that question correctly, you certainly can. There's a couple different ways to do that. There's a tool in Microsoft Excel where you can import an XML file and have a flat data table that shows all of the XML data. and make changes to that data. So if you wanted to convert a historical file that was called in another program or called manually, you could actually use Excel as sort of an in-between to import the XML, make some changes to the file, and then export it again to an XML. There's some header things you have to change when you do that. But I have done it, and I actually have a cheat sheet that I put together. So if anybody would like to use that process, let me know and I'll send you what I have. We'll get that out there, and maybe we can make a post on our website or something that explains a little bit of how to do that. The other thing you can do is just use a file editor like Notepad++ or something like that, and then navigate through the XML tags, and you can make changes there as well. That's actually exactly what I did for today's demonstration to change the quote unquote historical data file. And so I just went right into the XML file, made the changes there, and then we displayed those in the chart. So yeah, that works fine too. You can definitely do that. We had a question about Anritsu ML2496A drivers to PSCal. As of today, it's not formally on the roadmap, but I'll just put it on there. That should not be too difficult, although maybe I shouldn't say that in a public setting. We never know until we get into them. But we'll take a look at that and see if we can't get that added. I don't want to offer up a timeline right now until we've had some time to look at it, but I appreciate the feedback. I also got some feedback from some folks saying it would be nice to see an entire history to get an even more comprehensive idea of trends that are developing with particular sensors. So we'll take note of that. I want to thank you guys for that. So I think that I hit most of the questions. We'll give just a moment, see if there's anything additional coming along. I think we've covered everything. I want to, last time, I want to say thank you everybody for your time. Many of you know how to get a hold of me. You got phone numbers and email addresses, but feel free to email me if you have questions. Tolentino at TEGAM.com. So Tolentino at TEGAM.com. Again, we're going to go ahead and we're going to wrap up this webinar. The video, there'll be some post-processing that we do, just trimming off the start and the end, make it a little cleaner. And we'll get that posted and get emails out to everybody so that you can watch it again if you need to, or pass it along to other folks whom you think might need to see it. Thank you guys so much. We're going to go ahead and wrap up. Have a great day.